Hello, everyone. Welcome to our ongoing series called Founder Success Stories. I'm super excited today to share the time with Nishika of experiential insight. And I think that everybody who watches is really going to get something out of it in terms of the reason I thought this would be important is to talk from a professional service provider perspective, someone who's doing coaching, consulting, like helping organizations, and how you build platforms or productize, if you will, and expand beyond, let's say, the one-on-one delivery. And we're going to also touch on the effectiveness of group coaching in interventions versus one-on-one coaching. So we're going to cover a lot of different aspects, and I'll just ask some personal questions about Nishika's background, and you're going to get to know her. And we're going to dive right in. And I'm hoping that everybody watches this not only will be inspired for themselves in terms of what they can build and also how they can help organizations in their professional practice, but you may also consider receiving some group coaching or say, hey, I'm interested in group coaching when it comes to our company or our group. So I just want to welcome Nishika. Thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to get to know you and hence inviting you. So once again, thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Pleasure to be here.
So then let's talk about your background. How about introduce yourself? Who are you and what was your journey to establishing this company as a founder?
Yeah, great question. So my background is that I've spent, I want to say, the last 17 years in human development, human capital, human resources, and anything and everything to do with people impact and purpose, actually. So I worked at amazing companies like Deloitte and Salesforce and Cisco and Apple and several others, where I also got to lead incredibly large tech transformations and M&As and HR transformations and so on. And the common thread through it always the people component. You just can't be successful unless you take people along this journey. And I think now more than ever, we realize this so much with COVID and the hybrid work experiences that we are in. So EI was really born out of this genesis around how do we do people development the right way? And, we haven't quite figured it out. We haven't figured it out from a university perspective. We still tell people to pick a degree and we develop them for their left or their right brain. We get to, our workplace and the same thing occurs, right? We haven't really unlocked the potential of people around us. And so EI is really about taking a different approach that unlocks human potential in a way that sustains behavioral change over time. We don't want events to be one and done. We consider training to be an event, one and done. This is all about long-term potential so that when the individual wins, the organization wins, and when the organization wins, society wins, right? There's this incredible ripple effect of what can happen when people are much more impactful, purposeful, happy, fulfilled. They feel like they belong in their jobs and their workplaces. So that's what we do.
Fantastic. And I want to get into your methodology and your unique value proposition, but let's go back. So you're working and you could just, climb the corporate ladder and be very successful and have a great life, go on vacations and do all the things you want to do. What made you go out and say, I'm going to do the scary thing and start a company?
Because I was silly. I didn't know what I was getting into. No, well, here's the thing. When it feels right, Ed, it feels right. It's almost like you don't even question it. It's sort of what you're meant to be doing. And every bone in your body is telling you to go in that direction. Every cell in your body is saying, that's what you need to do. And you don't think about how big it's going to get or how challenging it's going to be. And there are moments when you wake up and you're like, wait, did I really sign up for this? And then you're like, yes, I did. But it's interesting because I think so many founders, it's like the naivety of a vision and wanting to make the world a better place, that kind of drives and pushes us forward. And then the rest kind of falls into place. You find the right people, you build the right processes, you have to trust in your vision, and you just have to be resourceful. That's the key. You can't make it if you're not resourceful, right? So I think it's a combination of all of those ingredients that brought me here in the first place and kept pushing me forward.
Okay, let's explore this a little further, because a lot of founders or consultants will say, I have corporate experience and professional service providers. So I have this domain expertise, which you clearly had, and they'll go independent and say, I'll work on my own, but there'll be a one-man shop, a one-person shop. You decide that you're going to, in essence, build a platform, a company, which is always better because it's not all about you. You're not the main point of contact. So then walk us through, what was the decision-making process? Say, I'm going to go beyond just doing, one-on-one or being all about me or a one-person shop. And I'm going to actually build a company with structures and everything, processes and everything that you talked about. Like, what happened? How did you make those decisions? What was the process there?
Yeah. So I had a clothing brand in between me leaving my last gig at Salesforce and starting EI. I'm also an artist, actually. So I dance, I paint, and I design clothing. So I took the clothing brand down the road of becoming a business. And what I realized, I ran it for about 3.5 years. We broke even after about a year and a half. It was going well. But what I realized was that with my brand, I had limited impact in terms of the number of people I could reach. Meaning, when it comes to sales of physical products, the amount of physical product determines your sales revenue. There's a limit, right? If I produce $1 million worth of physical products, I can only sell $1 million worth of revenue, right, related to that product. And so I was really curious about how could I have more impact and do bigger things without there being a limitation. So that was the genesis of me understanding kind of the relationship between physical products and revenue generation versus a service type business. And I hesitate saying service because we really utilize a platform and we consider ourselves to be a product business, but this idea that you can scale and infinitely reach multiple people. I've always been I want to say a dreamer / visionary, in that I really believe that you can do amazing things when you can reach people in far-reaching places, in different countries, and so on. And so why not go big, right? Like, why do the one-man band? I know that's easier, a lot less riskier, but the rewards are so much less for me personally. I want to get out there and employ people and generate, work in the economy and touch people's lives and take it to what we've now taken it to 55 countries around the world. So this is really what I want to be doing. And it's only 3 years. So much more to do. We're just still scratching that surface.
And I think that's one of the most amazing things I heard. When I heard this had only been going for 3 years and how much you've grown. So let's give a little preview. What would you say was the one secret that helped you go? Because 55 countries, 3 years, like many founders or consultants, like they're just barely scratching the surface to make enough money to sustain themselves in 3 years. What was the one thing that you did that you believed helped you expand that quickly?
I would say, really simply, know your shit.
Oh.
and I say that half laughing, half not joking at all, because I think that often, when people get into business, it's really clear whether they know intimately what they're doing and what they're selling. And the process of sales becomes so much easier when you're actually not even selling, you're solutioning. You're helping people solve problems because you know your shit so well, right? And to me, this is like a non-negotiable. Like, if you want to win, you just have to be an absolute expert in that subject matter in order to really move the needle forward. And I think that's why we work with the customers we work with. Like, they don't question our expertise. They don't question our credibility. They don't question whether to trust us or not. We become advisors to them after the first meeting, really. It's because we know what we're talking about and we know what we're doing, and we're not trying to sell you. We're trying to help you, right? So that, I would say, is the number one piece around how we've gotten to where we've gotten.
You said you're not selling, you're solutioning. That's what I heard, which I think is fabulous. So know your shit. And instead of selling, which every company needs to sell, and a lot of founders are afraid to sell. I remember talking to another founder the other day, and she was saying 90% of my job is not helping them with the technology or solving anything technical. It's the mindset of getting them out to sell. But instead of, oh, I got to go out there and sell, I'm actually going to solution. I'm solutioning And that in itself is selling. That's what I heard. How'd I do?
Correct. Yeah, you perfectly right on.
Okay, so then let's talk about how you develop your solutions and the unique value proposition, because this is also something that really stood out for me. Was you're very front and center saying, this is how we're different, this is how we've built our methodologies. You have an intellectual property, a framework that you know really differentiates you, sets yourself apart. And so I'm looking at your website, and it's the HyperQ. So tell us, how did this come about? What does this mean? And how does it relate to you solutioning as you sell?
Great. Yeah, I love that you brought this up. And so this is really our thought leadership around unlocking left and right brain thinking. And so we call the left brain, the left side of the brain rather, visionary intelligence. And under VQ, there are 7 success skills. And we call the right hand side of the brain emotional and social intelligence. And again, there are 7 success skills under ESQ. When we go into organizations, what we really want to know is, what success skills are you looking to grow that are going to align to your strategic priorities, align to your HR priorities, really your 3 to 5 year roadmap, right? And what needs to happen today, 6 months from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now. So companies will end up looking at VQ and saying, okay, well, we really want to build a growth mindset, or we're doing that right now, but we want to accelerate it. We want people to take 100% ownership. And then maybe for ESQ, they're like, we want dialogue, 2-way conversation, building trust, rapport, and we want our people to have greater self-awareness around how they come to the table, how they lead, etc. So we then anchor the entire program that we create around these success skills. And we are yet to talk to a company. And I mean, we work with most of the Fortune 50 companies and lots of little startups as well. We do the whole range. But a lot of them tell us, that this captures everything that they're thinking about and actually driving towards. And we're yet to hear someone say, well, actually, where's XYZ success skill, right? This is kind of the big bucket items, if you will, and all these other things fall underneath. So we end up being very precise and scientific around how we go to market, which is, we've got a ton of experience in HR and in human capital, and we've taken that and created this through focus groups and multiple interviews with leaders who are in different industries and who live across the world to really break this down into our art and science of how we do things. So this is kind of the beginning standpoint for us in terms of companies saying, I'm buying into HyperQ. I want a HyperQ workforce that's highly intelligent, operating at that next level. And this is really what brings us in the door. And we've had several customers buy us over another, partner simply because of HyperQ and what it entails.
So let's pull out, this is what I love. So when we're explaining to people, don't go out generically, like we help people with maximize their performance type thing. And you can use those generic terms and you're just going to get lost in the sea of everybody else that could say the same thing. And one of the conversations I was having with another consultant, we're talking about China, and one of the most successful companies out there is the Franklin Covey Institute, which banked off the fame of the 7 habits of highly successful people. And that was just a clear framework that could communicate, and they would go in organizations and say, we'll teach you these 7 habits, right? And that helped them expand and grow, and they're doing extremely well. Whereas many other consultants or organizations trying to sell B2B will go in very generically. You went out and set yourself apart using HyperQ and just clearly communicated, these are the things you're going to learn, these are the outcomes, pretty much like a roadmap, developing both sides of the brain. And that has been what also has helped you win the business.
For sure. I think that the way people function is that they want to understand structure, right? You need to give them a framework within which to live. You need to be able to put things in a box for them and say, here's what I'm giving you, here's what I'm delivering. When you have a conversation that's too broad, it's so ambiguous that you're giving them the job of figuring it out. Like, what am I getting here? We need to be the ones telling them what they're getting, right? So what we're doing is essentially giving them a structure and saying, here's what you get to select from. where would you like to go based on this structure?
I love it. I love it. Okay, now let's then talk about how you've differentiated yourself in terms of coaching. So let's set up the scenario here. You could have easily created a platform with a lot of one-on-one coaches. I know companies that are doing that, right now, and enhanced it with AI driven LMS interfaces, all those things, but one-on-one coaching. But you decide to go into group coaching, and I have on the screen here the way that you have clearly differentiated, and I love it because immediately I think bang for my buck. I love what you said right from point one, driven by the individual's needs in single one-on-one coaching versus driven by the organization's strategic objectives. Right away, I'm hooked if I'm thinking from a management perspective, because I'm the one making the decision. Everybody would love one-on-one coaching. Who doesn't like one-on-one coaching? But from a decision-making perspective. So then walk us through your mindset and how you decided, hey, I'm going to plant my flag in this group coaching as far as interventions are concerned. And how did you get started? What was it like pitching companies on this? Give us the story around that.
Okay, yeah. So we started, like you said, Ed, from day one with group coaching and all digital group coaching. So this world of COVID, not new to us at all. We've been hosting Zoom holiday parties since pre-COVID, right? And the reason why group mattered was because being an HR professional, I had obviously had multiple leaders who worked with me who I set up coaching for. I've also been a coach to several leaders. And what I find is that in one-to-one coaching, there is an incredible effectiveness that can happen, but it's always limited by the dynamics between the two people, right? And it's driven by that individual. In a group, and if you think about how do teams excel, how do organizations excel, they don't excel because of sole leaders who are amazing. They excel because groups can come together and co-create and co-share and collaborate and innovate. And so that's the dynamic we wanted to bring together and help them, break silos, operationally get more effective, build vulnerability, right? And in the process, because of COVID, it ended up being that all the things we were doing happened to have this massive acceleration for us, because suddenly every company was saying, I need my people to talk to each other. They're now in silos. People are having less of a sense of purpose. They're not getting connected. So group became the dominant / is becoming the dominant kind of approach to how development should occur. I also look at one-to-one from the standpoint of, I think one-to-one is something that is a little bit, it's sort of the beginning days of coaching, because we didn't fully understand the full potential of coaching. If you think about what's relevant today and what coaching looks like as a next iteration, it's definitely not one-to-one. It is 100% group, and we hear that time and time again from customers. But there are folks out there who run workshops, and they call those workshops group coaching. That's not group coaching. Group coaching has to be super precise, where you know what the expectations are. You're running through, frameworks, not from the standpoint of PowerPoint slides or anything, but a scientific way around taking the mind apart and piecing it back together for sustained behavioral change. And that's really what we do. And so the power of group is really in the shared experiences, the shared learning, the vulnerability, the ability for someone to create 30 new relationships in a year in their company that they didn't have before, or they didn't know those people that well, right? So, I mean, how incredible is that? And not just new relationships, we're talking about deep, vulnerable connections and those relationships, right? So there's something about co-creation that is just incredibly magical. And also the transformative power of learning from other people versus like you're just bouncing ideas with a coach. I've also had colleagues of mine tell me, I cancel my one-to-one coaching sessions when I have nothing on my agenda. But in group coaching, you don't have to have anything on your agenda to show up, because there's 5 other people in the room and a coach who are carrying the discussion forward, and you can listen and contribute, right? So you don't have to have an agenda, and that's the beauty. Whether you feel you need it or not, you need it, so you show up.
All right, let's pull out these principles here. First, from day one, you committed to your differentiator between single one-on-one coaching and group coaching. You stood by it. Question on that. What happens when a client says, I really love one-on-one coaching. Someone says, oh, if I could just get one-on-one time with Nishika, that would be absolutely fabulous. What do you do?
So we asked them why. Like, what is it that you think that one-to-one coaching will solve that group coaching won't? And there are times, not to negate one-to-one coaching, because there are times when someone just needs that extra TLC and it
Sure.
has to be one-to-one. And I think that's wonderful. But I do believe that the starting point should be group around expanding the mind, right? And providing other perspectives. And that's when we start to challenge them and they go, well, you know what? You're right. This is exactly what we need. And then they might say, and XYZ person also needs a bit of one-to-one. Sure, no problem. We can make that happen. But the premise and the genesis is always group.
Okay. So you're willing to accommodate, but you first challenge, which is all part of great coaching. Fantastic. So you're committed to that differentiator. First thing. Next commitment that you made was going digital. This is fascinating to me. So what was it like? What are the dynamics and the differences for you? And obviously we're talking this way, and our relationship, me as your startup advisor, we're all in virtual environments and doing this. So I live this world all the time. But what was it like in companies? How did they transition? What was the feedback? Were people weirded out? Like, did they struggle? Walk me through what it was like trying to do digital group coaching.
Yeah, so what was really interesting is pre-COVID, half the companies would basically say, nope, we prefer face-to-face. And half the companies would say, we prefer digital because we can connect people from different regions together. We can keep our costs low. But 50% of them, we'd have the conversation around why digital could be more effective. And we really thought about it from the perspective of being on the go. Because when you're on the go, which a lot of corporate people are, you're dropping your kids off at school, you're traveling for business, whatever, you have no reason not to attend. Because guess what? You can still attend versus it being face to face, right? So this idea of access is a large philosophy at EI, which is access on the go, access in terms of price points, access in terms of people connections, access in terms of living your best life, right? So access is such a key word for us. And I remember I had a whole bunch of advisors at the time who said to me, well, I don't know, digital won't work. How are you going to build a culture, etc.? But I had grown up in a digital world where, when I was a consultant with Deloitte Consulting, for example, I spent 5 years on the road. I mean, yes, I was at my client side, but as a Deloitte team, we saw each other maybe once a month or something, even though several of us went into the office on Fridays, people weren't always there. So you had to build digital relationships with your Deloitte colleagues. So I learned from a very early age, and that was my first job after my MBA that I took on. So I learned that digital can be incredibly effective because it allows people to live their best lives, live from wherever they want, but you have to create culture by design. Culture can't just fall into place, right? So we very purposely don't have tools like Slack at EI. We pick up the phone and call. And we have video meetings like this all the time. And the reason is I don't want people hiding behind a messenger tool, which means that you'd break the culture, right? The culture needs to be live interactions, video, pick up the phone and call, crack a joke, have some human interaction, get your work done. And that's how you build culture. So we've taken some very purposeful measures in terms of what digital means, both for our customer and also for our employee base in terms of them feeling connected and feeling like they're part of a big mission versus, isolated and doing their own thing.
Fantastic. All right. Let me show you the next thing on your website. So here's some data in terms of the results. How are you collecting this data? And what other, what do all these metrics mean in terms of translating to an organization and the benefits?
Yeah, we are huge data fans. And the reason for that is, Ed, when I was in HR, I think the most frustrating thing about being in HR was that we didn't have data to support a lot of things, especially the development aspect when it comes to humans. My clients would say to me, I've just sent 200 people through training, tell me what happened. And I would only be able to say, well, people liked it. They found the instructor motivating. The room was really airy. It was fresh and no one got tired in there. The lunch was healthy. And they're like, what the hell? Are my people more strategic? Are they more engaged? Like, tell me stuff that actually matters. So it was a real pain point, like we couldn't give them the data they needed. So when I started EI, there were two things I was fundamentally solving for. One was unlocking human potential in a way that created sustained behavioral change. So not an event, sustained behavioral change. And the second was data that equips a customer to understand at every point in time what actually is happening. Are my people better engaged? Are they finding more purpose in their jobs? Do they have a higher growth mindset? Do they feel more equipped to add value in the workplace? Are they making different strategic decisions, etc.? So this piece was such a large anchor around how we built EI. So we take a 360 view really to measuring ROI, which really does matter. And this data is representative of that, and our customers love it because they don't get data like this anywhere else in terms of development work that they're doing. So it really helps them understand why they're spending money with EI, why we are the chosen partner, right, versus somebody else, and what value they're totally getting from an ROI perspective.
So critical, because if you look at something like coaching, which has always been considered the soft stuff, right? We could argue it's all about the soft skills, which doesn't make a lot of sense because of the hard targets and the hard things and the objectives and how it really can move the needle from an ROI perspective. So many people go in and they use, in essence, qualitative data versus quantitative data. So you establish right away, we're going to use quantitative data and we're going to educate. Here's the question for you. How actually are you gathering this? Is it constant surveys, pulse checks? What happens?
Yeah, we do a lot of assessments, very, very short assessments that start all the way from the participant to different people who are in the ecosystem of that participant. And then we gather data. So we are big believers of not pulling down the system, meaning because, like, for example, there are so many people I'm sure who can identify with the fact that maybe you've done a 360 at some point. It took you like an hour and a half to do it. That is way too long. Like, who has an hour and a half to sit down and do a 360, right? So for us, everything has to be very short, very concise, very to the point, so that we really drive and get to data in the most crisp way possible that allows our customers to understand at every point in time what is happening.
Okay, fantastic. So, which is really great. Again, it's part of the sales process. End to end, you're providing the full suite, which creates so much confidence and de-risks the investment, because everybody's always, constantly weighing that. Now, I'm going to just show this. I'm going to brag a little bit about the clients that you're helping. Very impressive. And we won't go too far in pumping the tires here, but I love it. But here's what I'm curious about here. You had an app. So what's the thought process behind adding an app? Everybody's got an app, but how does it integrate with your offering, your platform?
Yeah, great question. And so our platform is now a mobile platform and also a desktop platform. And so the whole idea is that it brings people together into a space, which is a hybrid of a LinkedIn and a Zoom, if you will, and a messenger application. And the conversations stay in the platform. So in other words, if I'm in a group of 6 people and a coach, in between sessions that happen an hour a week, once a week, I can still continue the discussion and dialogue with the folks in my platform. I can also network and have access to other people in my company who are in the platform and others who are in other companies on the platform. And very soon here, we're going to be offering a lot of free content as well around sort of allowing people to join coaching sessions for free because, maybe folks from other senior managers at another company that's similar happen to be interesting, right? In terms of getting their perspective, growing together, creating kind of that group dynamic and that network effect, etc. So really for us, it's about how do we keep people in the platform, continuing the dialogue, continuing their growth journey and evolving and coming back for different types of journeys that allow them to evolve as well.
I'm curious then, how you came to develop your app, it wasn't right. It wasn't iteration one. So I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, you just continue to receive feedback as you are working with your clients, and then reinvested your revenue into creating an app to enhance what you were already offering versus making it something that you had a vision for right from the beginning, or am I looking at it backwards?
So actually, we did have the vision at the beginning. My
Okay.
vision was that we would be a platform that people are on and they would access from anywhere, anytime. And so we did spend the first, 10 months or so not in the app because we were developing it. And then, we developed the app and people transitioned into the platform. But the platform has been a large part of the access data point that I shared with you, which is what we're anchored around, right? Like, how do we get to more people faster in different countries, etc. And technology, as we all know, is such an incredible enhancer and accelerator. And to the extent that you can use it to be just that, the benefits are tremendous. So we wanted to have something light, easy, that connects people, allows them to be in the same space, right? And now the question for us is, how do we amplify that experience? How do we provide people with more? Because if you go to the app store or get into our platform on the web right now, if you are not a customer of ours, you will not see much at all.
Mm.
You have to be a customer, actually coming from a customer organization, because we go B2B. And so you won't see much at all, but the goal is to also give that free user, somebody who doesn't work for maybe Microsoft or Deloitte or whoever, right? And they should also be able to have access to content for free. And that's really what the next generation of what we're working on will be.
Okay, so really it has to do with your overarching go-to-market strategy as well to reach more people, expand that audience. So now you're kind of going what I call the B to C to B model, where you're going to invite a B2C users, but then obviously they're going to be inside companies, et cetera. And it's just a great way to capture more leads that way.
That's right, absolutely. And right now we lose customers when the employee is not being paid for a program through their company.
Gotcha.
We lose them, right? And we shouldn't, because we get these lovely love notes telling us what they got out of it, and we shouldn't lose them. So that's the piece that we really want to get into as well.
Okay, great. I'm curious then how you manage your roster, because in essence, you kind of built a two-sided marketplace. There's supply and then there's demand. If you can share and divulge some details, is everybody an independent contractor? Are they employees? Like, how do you find your coaches and manage quality?
Yeah, this is a really tough one for so many folks who are in the coaching space. So we have taken a very rigorous approach to how we do this piece, Ed. And so for us, quality is absolutely number one. We now have close to 70 coaches who are based around the world in different locations. So technically, we can cover any time zone anywhere in the world, and we do. Like, we have coaching tracks and products running all day and night. And our rigorous approach basically means that only 33% of folks who apply to EI even get into EI. They may still be working with the top companies, but maybe their approach is different, right? Maybe the quality they place on group coaching or coaching in general is different to what we expect. I think a statistic that sets us apart incredibly in the industry is we have not been asked to replace a coach to date, not once, which is kind of unheard of in our industry,
Wow.
Yeah, so we take a ton of pride in that, and that is because of the recruitment process, the way we certify them, the way we hold them accountable, and they are independent contractors, to answer your question. So they do run their own private practice, but they give us time as well. So they're balancing their private needs where they can't necessarily scale because they're doing the one-to-one coaching. Some of them are doing group, but then with us, they reach these incredible customers in different parts of the world. They're part of a coach community, and they tell us that they've become a better coach, or they become better coaches as a result of being with EI, which is amazing. So we get to help them be better even in their own private practice, which I love.
Regardless of what credentials they come in, I'm hearing you certify them in your own methodologies. I'm curious then, and without throwing anybody under the bus, I'm curious what you think about these global certification bodies. I'm certified in one of these myself, but these kind of global certification bodies, these associations, and what you're seeing coming out of them. I'd love your professional opinion. If you could critique that,
Sure.
or do you think they're awesome and you want everybody to come and they're great? What do you think?
Yeah, it's such a good question, by the way. It's sort of like saying that anybody who has a degree is awesome at what they do.
Yeah.
And we know that's not true at all. So I think that, certification is just one part of it. It's not the whole part of it. We have turned down so many coaches who are ICF certified and you name it, right? It doesn't mean anything to me, to be honest. Like it's just an extra credential, which is great if you have, but also it may be that you don't stand out just because you have it, right? What we look for is really experience. In my mind, nothing beats experience, cross-cultural experience across different layers of the company in terms of different roles, right? Having experience across different industries. Nothing beats this because we've come across coaches who have incredible certifications and they have no experience to draw from. They have hours in terms of coaching hours that they got, but still no experience to draw from. So I think it's finding the right mix and balance. I'm not a certified coach myself. Will I go get certified at some point? Probably not, because I'm counting on the experience piece. And I think the coaching piece is much easier to learn. It requires obviously lots of sensory acuity, lots of empathy, being able to kind of draw in psychological traits and components, and then posing good questions, knowing what you're trying to get to and steer outcomes. I think that part is easier to teach. The experience part, you either have it or you don't. And that's the stuff that really is the nitty-gritty of credibility, in my opinion.
Okay. I could sit here, we could talk all day and I could pick your brain. There's just so many good nuggets, especially around your methodology. And I'd love to dive in and learn about HyperQ. I think it's so fascinating. Let's end this. I'm going to ask you sort of two scenarios. Okay. If you could give enduring advice that would haunt someone with value. Okay. I'm going to give you two people that you're going to give advice to. Okay. First is the professional services provider who's out there trying to build a business as a consultant or maybe a coach or what have you, may have aspirations or maybe wants to be able to get on your platform or just become better at their effectiveness inside an organization, helping with organization development, change, etc. So that's the first person. The second person would be a startup founder who, maybe a female founder who is going, oh, how do I build, maybe comes from a similar type background. What advice would you give them in terms of building a startup? So the first one's the professional service provider, coach, consultant, what have you, inside organizations. And another one, the next one is the founder building a company. What advice would you give each?
Okay. So to the first person, the professional consultant / coach, I would say know your shit. And honestly, there is nothing that comes close to that. You either know your stuff inside out, and every person who meets you will sense that in 5 seconds or less, or you kind of don't. And I think that credibility in this industry is absolutely key. Read a ton, be curious, ask for feedback, be open-minded, right? I think these are critical aspects of becoming even better at what you do and creating more self-awareness so you can jumpstart and relaunch and constantly keep rebranding yourself, right? I think it's super critical. For the founder, and especially a female founder, is, trust yourself, have the confidence to dream big, to take big risks, and know you can do anything. Like, I remember when I was fundraising for my second round of funding, I had people tell me things like, well, women, they don't get funds as easily as men. And I mean, all these things. And I was like, no, like, why would I put myself in that box? Those statistics, they are not for me, right? In other words, like, how do I circumvent? How do I jump over? How do I break the statistics? How do I go for the things I believe in because I know I'm capable? So that's what I will say to the founder, which is know your capabilities and believe in yourself, and don't let statistics or anything stop you. Just go for it. And it's amazing what you can achieve, Ed, if you believe in yourself.
Absolutely. First, know yourself and then believe in yourself. And through that combination, like yourself, I just find it amazing how you've just taken that approach. And it's just, I think so many people would benefit just from being around you and your presence and listening to you talk. So I encourage everybody to uh, contact you. How about you share what's the best way to contact you? What would be your invitation if people would be interested getting to know you or using your services?
Yeah, send me a note. My email is nishika@experientialinsight.com. And yeah, I would love to chat. I'm always open, love meeting curious minds, love meeting people in general. You want to brainstorm? I'm here. Would be a pleasure to connect.
Fantastic. Well, once again, I can't thank you enough for this insightful, illuminating discussion, inspiring, and I look forward to getting all the reactions. Like I said, anybody watching this, either contact me, I'll put the notes in for contacting Nishika and exploring experiential insight more. Thank you very much once again, and we're going to do this again for sure.
Yes, thank you so much, Ed. My pleasure. And thank you for having me here. So, so fun.
You bet.